You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hey, music lovers, welcome back to Modern Musicology and welcome to 2025.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Happy New Year. So we have the whole gang in place. We have drummer, singer, songwriter, Stephanie Seymour.
Hello, everyone.
We have DJ and journalist Rob Levy.
Hey.
Oh, if only listeners could have seen that. And we have international man of mystery, Anthony Williams.
Happy New Year.
Is it happy? Sorry, is it happy?
It will be very
We'll
happy.
see. We'll see.
We just have to carry the happiness in our hearts.
Okay.
Optimism, Stephanie. Optimism.
All righty.
Mm-hmm.
And I am somebody. What am I? I am percussionist and author, and I'm going to just say it, filmmaker,
Hell
or
yeah.
Alan Seiler.
That's right.
That sounds so fucking pretentious.
No, you shout that from the rooftops, Alan.
That's an insult to actual filmmakers.
All right,
No.
documentarian then.
Okay, I'll take that.
Mm.
Okay, so this week, this is the first week of January, and normally, we kind of have a little pattern where we kick off our year with a Beatles episode, and this year we're not doing that. This year, we're shifting gears a little bit. The first week of January, actually, it's more like the second week of January, we have two important dates in the life of David Bowie. He was born on January 8th, 1947, and he passed away January 10th, 2 days later in 2016. And that is known in the Bowie circles as it's coming, just after Christmas. It is Bowie-mas. So It is the week that we celebrate the life and legacy and career of David Bowie. So our show tonight, and of course next year, 2026, will be 10 years after his passing. So I think we'll do something very special for that. But for this year, we're going to do a show all about our favorite covers of Bowie songs by other artists. And Rob, this was a topic that you suggested. So why don't you kick us off?
I had noticed, kind of going through my record collection and stuff, that, wow, there's an awful lot more David Bowie covers than I thought. The impetus was that I listened to the Seu Jorge album again. And I was digging around. I'm like, wow, there's more than I knew of. And then I started looking around some more online. I'm like, okay, as many as I thought there are hundreds more. And it got me thinking of I know about songs like Cactus and stuff that Bowie did and stuff. But then I was thinking about literally everyone for the last 30 years has somehow covered Bowie, either live or as a B-side or just whatever. And if you're Duran Duran, it seems like every week. I knew he was influential. I knew he had a profound effect on people, but just how many of these artists I play on the radio, I did a Bowie cover. And I did this sort of experiment where I went through one of my playlists and I said, I looked at everybody on the playlist that I played that night and typed in to see if they did a Bowie cover. And out of 32 songs I played, 17 of those people had done Bowie covers. And it just kind of got, and I wasn't planning it. It just kind of got me thinking wow, there's a lot. Well, as usual, when I think of anything about Bowie that's a surprise to me, I messaged Alan. It's wow, there's a lot of Bowie covers. And then that kind of started this whole thing. So.
Well, that's a great topic. I'm glad we're doing this. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I have a great list of stuff, and I know you all do too. Who wants to kick us off with the first thing on whatever they first come up with on their list?
Can I just do the most obvious one? I feel like it's the most obvious one.
Okay, what is the most obvious one?
I think the most obvious one is Nirvana, The Man Who Sold the World from Unplugged.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
But it's, it's so great that it needs to be mentioned, even though it is so obvious.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is from 1993, the famous Unplugged Nirvana show, which was absolutely insanely fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think this probably led a lot of Nirvana fans into the Bowie catalog, like if they weren't already familiar with it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The whole concert is really spectacular, but I really think that they managed to make this song sound like a Nirvana song, like almost like a song that they wrote, even though it is still pretty faithful to the original. But I mean, it's obviously just stripped down. It's still really powerful, really poignant. So I think that's the most obvious one.
And that vocal, I think, is so distinctive, and it's so distinctively different than what Bowie did with it. I think is one of the defining factors of that cover. You just cannot mistake that voice. You know?
Yeah. Yes.
And it's interesting because you're right, Stephanie, people do think of it quite a lot as a Nirvana song now. I know people who have no clue it's a cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's interesting about it is it's so early in Bowie's career. It was from his third album. And he's not yet the Bowie who's been Ziggy or the Thin White Duke. And a lot of that kind of trademark sound that he's known for hasn't developed yet.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
A lot of people wouldn't necessarily hear it and immediately think, oh yeah, that's David Bowie. This isn't glam Bowie yet. And I think that's kind of why it worked as a Nirvana song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting too, because a lot of the Bowie covers that we mentioned, the artists who cover them, it becomes part of their lexicon and sort of transforms the song into a different life. So for us, it's like you said, it's a pre-glam Bowie song, but now it's attached to like Cobain and his suicide and everything that happened to him. It's so entrenched in that life that it takes on, The Man Who Sold the World sort of takes on this whole different meaning in the context of Kurt Cobain's life instead of David Bowie's life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. His songs take on sort of this interesting pattern where they're almost clothes that an artist borrows from somebody else and puts on, and they fit him and they walk into the world.
That's a great analogy. That really
That's
is.
just kind of what happens with that record with me. And I just remember watching that and hearing that and going, okay, this is a man who's not well. I didn't know what was wrong, but like, there's something wrong here, you know, so, lo and behold. So
yeah,
you could just tell that was the same thing. And I know it's different as the Leadbelly cover that he did on that show. You could hear in the cover songs they did that there definitely was like pain and melancholy in there. So, right. So having that song sort of amped up by Cobain to like emphasize sort of the regret and the sort of pathos to it is really an interesting take on it.
Yeah.
So as you all were putting your list together, did you see a pattern of what you were gravitating toward? Is there a certain kind of cover that you like more than others? Is it if an artist does something completely different and unique with it, or if they stick note for note to the original, is there a preference there?
Generally, I like them rocked up.
Yeah.
I have a mixture, I would say.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like my preference isn't going to surprise anyone. How about you, Alan?
Well, I didn't go into this by design, but what I ended up with was an entire list of covers that are not rock.
Oh.
And so every one of mine are something that have been taken and transformed pretty drastically in most cases. So it's going to be interesting to go through these and kind of lay them out for you.
Do you want to do that? Do you want to start with one of them?
So one of them, and this wasn't even one of the ones that I first thought of, but well, actually, no, I'm not going to do it that one. I'm going to start with a couple of artists that have played in Bowie's band. And the first one of those is Rick Wakeman. And he did an album, I don't remember, it was 10 or 20 years ago, whatever it was. And it was all like piano arrangements of songs. And he does this piano solo arrangement of Life on Mars, because of course he played on Life on Mars on the original recording. So he's taking this part that he played and has basically transformed it into a purely instrumental solo instrument arrangement of this song. And knowing Rick Wakeman, as everyone does, It's full of very flowery playing, glissandos everywhere. It's just beautiful. It's so ornate and it's so expressive, and it's just it is like 3 minutes of pure ecstasy. It's just pure joy, and it's Rick celebrating his connection to David Bowie. And that kind of defines the sort of things that I gravitated to on my list, where even if they're played by a rock musician, they are the version itself is not rock. So that's where I'm starting from, and I got some interesting picks after that.
Yeah, mine are kind of all over the place, just because maybe it's the radio in me, but I'm like, wow, I have an awful lot of singles that B-sides are Bowie records. And there's a lot of interesting things too. I mean, it's everything from like, Philip Glass to like other stuff, right? It's kind of all over the place. Mine is. So I kind of knew that Anthony was going to rock out. So I kind of avoided that off of my lists. But I am surprised at how many like heavy rock acts have actually covered Bowie. Mm-hmm. It's a surprise, but it's also not a surprise at the same time. There's actually a Japanese punk band that is they haven't recorded it, but they're basically going to re-record Tin Machine's first album.
Oh my God.
As like a Japanese punk rock album.
They're going to re-record the whole album?
They're basically doing a concept album. They're basically doing an entire cover album of the first Tin Machine as like this girl. It's not Shonen Knife, but it's going to sound like Shonen Knife and the Boredoms covering David Bowie. It's just going to be like screaming Japanese girls singing Bowie. It's going to be fantastic.
Because I fucking love those Tin Machine albums.
Yeah. I also think that speaks to the depth and the influence. There's not many artists you can say of the last 100 years that have had this much of a profound influence across genres. Everyone from like, jazz musicians to reggae artists to like Norwegian death metal guys to ska bands to dubstep. All these people are doing Bowie covers. It's pretty profound.
I think that really speaks to just the impact that Bowie had on modern music.
Yeah.
Anthony, you have to tell who is your person, because I just have to know.
All right. So my number one favorite David Bowie cover is a cover of Cat People. It is the version from the movie, not the Let's Dance version. And that was done by the primary artist on it was Shooter Jennings, son of Waylon.
Mm-hmm.
And the artist who is featuring on it and does the majority of the singing is an artist who's been rather controversial throughout his career, but more recently has been into all sorts of trouble for, and I'm going to be careful here, alleged mistreatment of women, and that is Marilyn Manson.
Oh, yeah.
When you said in our group chat that you had a controversial pick for your number one, and you said, it's been so long, I thought, I know exactly what he's doing.
I was hinting. So yeah, I mean, I love that track. I think, one, Shooter Jennings really understands Bowie.
True.
And Alan, you and I have had this conversation before. He is an enormous David Bowie fan, and he was at DragonCon one year, and there was an attempt to get him onto a David Bowie panel. I think that was you that told me that.
Yes.
And then Marilyn Manson, he has that deep voice that really vibes well with the baritone that Bowie used on that track. And Shooter worked quite a lot with Manson, produced his last album before all of the most recent set of controversies came out, and really knew how to get the best out of him. And the impact is this like weird meld of country and gothy rock with Manson's deep baritone voice. It just works so astonishingly well, and I keep coming back to it time and time again, and it never quite moves off of my rotation.
Shooter has done a couple of Bowie covers, and live he has even performed Magic Dance from Labyrinth, which you would not think would fit as a Shooter cover. But he also formed his own record label called Black Country Rock Records, which is a Bowie song from the Man Who Sold the World album.
Hmm.
Well, and Shooter's interesting because even on his original work, in terms of genre, he's all over the place.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you think he's the son of Waylon, he's going to be an outlaw country artist. No, he dabbles in a little bit of everything. So I'm not surprised to hear, you know, what he's done Bowie-wise, and that it's not what you might expect, because there is a preconception there, and the preconception of his work is wrong.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah. That Jennings name really throws you to a certain direction, but he doesn't subscribe to that necessarily. It's
Absolutely
very cool.
not.
So let's talk about Beck
Yeah.
and his cover of Sound and Vision. This is a performance from 2013. There's I think it's a 167 piece orchestra and like a full choir. It's filmed at 20th Century Fox Studios in LA. I just feel like everyone needs to Google this performance. There's almost like no words to really describe what's going on, because the way the voices and instruments combine and like juxtapose, sometimes even from like note to note and beat to beat, are super fascinating. It like really, especially in the intro of that song, they're just using, you know, their conductor is just, they're just doing things here and there that are just like really dynamic. It ebbs and flows so well. I think that when they kick into double time also, like about 3/4 of the way through, I mean, it's like almost like a church revival kind of thing happening. And just hearing Beck's voice with like that huge choir behind it is it's just really electrifying.
It's a really, really interesting arrangement.
Yeah.
And it takes a very, well, fairly straightforward song and really fleshes it out to new dimensions. And when you say people should Google, they should find it on YouTube, because
YouTube.
you can listen to the song, but you have to see
Oh
the
yeah,
performance.
yeah. I
You
agree.
know, it is so interesting because it's rock musicians with a orchestra, with a choir. It's all, I mean, it is just the coolest thing.
Yeah, it's pretty astonishing. And that is, to think that someone imagined that transformation of that song, it's incredible, I think.
Yeah. Beck, of course, is also known for his other Bowie cover, which came from the
Diamond
Moulin Rouge soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. Diamond Dogs.
Diamond Dogs.
Yep. Which I thought was good. You know, I think that's good. I just think that this is like insane.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
The Sound and Vision cover is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think.
So that brings up an interesting point too, because Bowie really actually does transfer well. David Byrne did a cover of Heroes with the Choir. It was at a Ford Foundation benefit. That's really interesting too. Byrne, who was a pretty good friend of his, sort of transforms Heroes into this sort of like almost combination of Talking Heads and Paul Simon Graceland era version of Heroes. That's really cool. And then, you know, also piggybacking off of that, Steph, we were talking about this earlier, the Langley School of Music cover of Space Oddity, which is, I think, what, 74 maybe? I don't know.
It's mid 70s. Yeah, probably 74. Yeah.
It's just so beautiful. And basically the Langley School of Music is they just take these kids that are a choir and get them to sing all these pop songs, and it totally works. And
it does, but it's very odd. I mean, it's psychedelic and creepy and cool, and it's almost like, you know, you're hearing the kids from the Wall, you know, when they're singing Brick in the Wall. It's sort of like that, but they're just like in a gymnasium at their school, at their elementary school, recording these songs, you know. And actually, you know what, Rob, is interesting about that? That actually became like a whole cult hit, because in 2001 their covers were released on an album called Innocence and Despair, and like that was like a kind of a really culty thing in the indie music world. I read that in New York City, the store Other Music, it was like their number one, it was their 61 bestseller of all time. Like, that's crazy, you know, just this choir album of kids.
It'd never been on CD before, I think, and I'm not sure there was a proper vinyl either. So like they worked it to college and indie radio.
Yeah.
Alternative wouldn't touch it, but like you hear it and it's just like, it's almost indescribable, you know. It's like ghostly and ethereal, but also like just strange and weird. It fits Bowie perfectly because it's like otherworldly and weird, but also like very melodic and poppy at the same time. It kind of fits a lot of his boxes that he checks off as an artist.
So I wanted to take us back to Heroes for a second, because you mentioned about that being a fairly ethereal and strange cover. Heroes seems to be one of the ones that gets some odd treatments time and time again.
Yes.
Peter Gabriel's version of Heroes is very slow, very haunting. Janelle Monáe did a cover of Heroes. This is very different. I'm not a fan of it, but I understand why people might be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems to be one of those ones that is open to reinterpretation and isn't necessarily a faithful cover.
Yeah, the Blondie version of it is interesting because you hear a female voice sing it, which is interesting. And then not this last one, but the tour before this last one, Depeche Mode covered it because Bowie was a huge influence on Dave Gahan. And that's actually like much better than I thought it was going to be. I'm not a fan of the Janelle Monáe one. The Blondie one, when I heard it, I'm like, this is just, it was just kind of weird and jarring, but I've really grown to love that one.
A couple that aren't necessarily part of my official list, but this brings up the fact that Fame has been covered lots of times by lots of artists in lots of different ways. And a few that I can just think of right off the top of my head, the Eurythmics have one that's really cool. Mm-hmm. It is very electronic. It is very Eurythmics. They totally turn it into a Eurythmic song of the era that they recorded in. And I think it's very cool. It's different enough that it might throw off a Bowie listener, but I think that I think it's super cool.
I was going to say it's like just about as weird as you'd imagine it would be from the Eurythmics, you know?
Yeah, from that earlier Eurythmics period. Yes, definitely. Duran Duran's I hate.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God. It's up tempo and it's dancey, but I think it completely destroys the groove of the original, you know?
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean, but the only reason I love it is because it was sort of like when I was like 14 or 15 getting so into Duran Duran, and it was like, I don't think I even knew it was a Bowie song then when I was, I don't even know if I did, you know, but it sort of holds a special place in my heart. But I agree. It's not, I mean, look, it's not, they did some other covers, Duran Duran of Bowie songs, like 5 years, and that's a lot better than.
Yes, I do like 5 years better than Fame.
While we're on Fame, I have what I think is a spiritual cover of Fame, i.e. it is so clearly heavily influenced by Fame, but isn't a direct cover. And that's Steven Wilson with Self. That track has such a similar guitar line on it to Fame. And in the video, he does like a deep fake video where he's taking on the faces of different famous people. And the last one he does as the song is ending is Bowie.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a very, very deliberate nod there. So not a direct cover, but damn close.
That's really cool. And then there's one that I discovered this week that I had not known about before. Tommy Lee of Motley Crue did a cover of Fame, and he turned it into almost a nu metal quasi rap kind of thing. Heavy guitars. The chorus is just like rap, and it's so strange, but I kind of love it. Even though I'm not a big Tommy Lee fan, it's so interesting that I was like, okay, this is different, but I couldn't pull myself away from it also.
Cool.
Interesting.
I got to find that.
All right. So I'll jump in with another one. This is kind of coming back to the Beck cover that uses a full orchestra. And two of my favorite, this is another, we were talking earlier about a full album cover. This is two of my favorite derivative works from Bowie. And this is Philip Glass. He turned two different Bowie albums, Low and Heroes, into a full symphony. Symphony number 2, and I think number 3 or 4. And it's from 94 and 96. And it's so interesting because, you know, Philip Glass, the minimalist composer, he turns these pieces, he takes either the full song or a moment, a theme, a minimalist kind of melody from a song, and uses that as the germ from which he grows this really lush and beautiful piece. And these are full album, like, a 50, 60-minute symphony based on the song, every song from those two albums. And they're extraordinary. Oh my gosh. They're so beautiful. I'm a kind of a Philip Glass fan anyway. I love that whole minimalist thing. You have to be in the right mood for it, for some of his stuff. But I think some of them he transforms to the point where I don't even find the original germ from the song into the piece that he's created, but some of them are so obvious where they come from. So it's a cool listening experience where you can hear the originating piece in the new arrangement sometimes, and sometimes you don't, but it's there somewhere. Philip knows where it is, even if I can't find it. And I think they're both extraordinary works.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So as you see, none of mine are going to be rock.
Right. Well, I'll jump in with something that I think is a very faithful cover to the original song, which is Bauhaus's version of Ziggy Stardust.
Yes.
Yes.
Which, this was, I came out in 82, but like when I found out about it when I was, hanging out at Danceteria, like 83, 84, and they would play that video nonstop. It was just like constant. But the funny thing is they also played the Bowie video for Ziggy nonstop also. So I would see both of them a lot together. But it's just it's really faithful, like I said, to the original, but it's just like slightly more like gothy, punky, kind of raw video shot and what looks like a club in a basement, basically, and just like tons of goth kids in the audience. And
Yeah.
I think I much prefer Bowie's version now. I don't know. Back then, I kind of was like really into the Bauhaus version, but I think, there's sort of nothing that can top the Ziggy Stardust original, But
Yeah,
it's a good
it
cover.
is so iconic.
Yeah.
But I think the Bauhaus version is super cool.
Yeah. It is.
And what's interesting about the Bauhaus version is that at the time, a lot of people I knew that were quote unquote goths, that was their springboard into Bowie.
Oh, totally.
At least in America. So it was like, it was really interesting hearing all these people. Oh, who's this David Bowie guy, right? And I'm just kind of like, that kind of got him launched into that subculture, which is kind of fascinating. So
Yeah, because it was literally like a decade later, from the original.
Yeah.
So it was a whole new generation of kids, that got to experience that, like me.
Yeah.
So speaking of incredibly, incredibly faithful covers, and there's a little backstory to this. Every year, Steve Hogarth, the singer of Marillion, does some Christmas shows. It's normally just him and a piano. He has done a few full band ones. And a lot of years, but not every year, he does Life on Mars.
Oh.
Just him and a piano.
Oh, nice.
And I saw him do it in the Union Chapel in London in, I think, 2008. And it is haunting, brilliant, uplifting, all at the same time. And it's just incredibly faithful, or at least as faithful as just one guy and a piano can be. But it's amazing. And Steve Hogarth has such a beautiful voice.
Wow.
Speaking of one guy and a piano, I've mentioned before, one of my great regrets in life is not going to see Prince the last time he came to Atlanta, because it was the last time he played anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go because it wasn't him and a full band. It was him and a piano. And at those last shows, this was 2016, he played Heroes at both shows. He played the Fox Theater here in Atlanta at like 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. or something like that. It was 2 shows on the same day, and played Heroes. And that was his, because this was really not too long after Bowie had passed. And so, here's Prince, who is literally about to walk to his death. No one knew it at the time. A week later, he was dead.
Wow.
And he's doing this tribute to Bowie. Oh,
Yeah.
man, I'm just, it kills me that I did not go see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
I've decided I'm going to come up with a modern musicology drinking game. Okay. So you're going to have to take like a big swig of straight vodka every time Stephanie mentions Danceteria.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, I don't know what drink. We'll have to come up with a drink
Just
for
like
Anthony.
bingo?
What?
It's like bingo.
Sure.
Yeah.
Scotch.
And a big drink of something every time Anthony brings up Marillion.
Yeah.
Scotch.
You have to do a shot every time Rob says right, and you'll have to tell me what mine's going to be. What should it be?
Prince.
Mm.
Or when you go ooh, you go ooh a lot.
Do I? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
You're like,
Or just when you mention Bowie, in which case with this episode,
Yeah, we're going to be all
dear listener,
shocked.
you're getting shit-faced.
and then the if you have a bingo card, the free spaces, we talk about Sparks.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
That's hilarious.
That's
All right.
coming your
Yeah,
way,
but
modern
circling-
musicology fans.
Circling back to Heroes, Oasis did a really good cover of Heroes.
Yes,
That's
They
interesting.
did, and thankfully it was Noel singing on it.
Yes, and I remember watching OMD on BBC Two, the tour. I think the tour before the last one, and they did both Genie and Heroes. And I'm like, this is going to be a train.
Oh,
wreck.
I just
And,
did it again. Take a shot.
they were both really fantastic.
Wow,
Which really surprised me.
I need to find that.
I've got them somewhere. If I see them, I'll send them over to you.
Okay, cool.
But those were really great. And then some of mine ended up like much more synthy on my list than I expected them to be, which is not what I expected, but sorry. The Associates, who very much were associated with, sort of like the whole Bowie kind of aesthetic, did a really cool cover of Boys Keep Swinging.
Ooh, God, I love that song.
Yeah, and that was really neat. And then also, oddly enough, I think it's 86. It was a B-side, and I liked it better than the single, which I can't remember what the single was, but Frankie Goes to Hollywood did a cover of Suffragette City that just
Really?
rocks.
I didn't know
It's
about
like,
that.
well, I mean, at the time, if there's a band on the planet that can really do like glam, Frankie Goes to Hollywood could probably kind of do glam. And it's all really like vamped up and that's actually surprisingly fantastic. And then most recently, actually, as we record this, but not necessarily super soon, the Pet Shop Boys just covered All the Young Dudes, which they've been literally playing everywhere. It's like in their shower, walking down the street. You can't go anywhere without them like playing it. But they did a cover of All the Young Dudes, and they basically took all the guitar riffs and turned them into like really hard bassline synth chords, which is kind of a fascinating way to do it, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. And then I think Somewhere the Human League did a Bowie cover, but I can't remember which one it was. But so like all these synth pop bands kind of coming out of the New Romantics that were influenced by the New Romantics all are doing. Midge has a Bowie cover, So Boy George did Starman. There's this like legacy of like people that came out of like, glam and Bowie and the Blitz Club and the New Romantics. They all eventually cover Bowie. And I think that,
He was a
if
huge
you go
influence
through
on that scene.
if you go, I wish we had Richard Evans here to talk about it, but there's a ton of these like bands from 82 to 86 that are covering Bowie. It's just,
And I
nuts.
think that makes a lot of sense in the light of so much of that scene, but particularly the aesthetic.
Yes.
Bowie brought androgyny to the scene very, very early on, and then as you come to the New Romantics, you see a lot of that coming back.
Yeah.
After it had kind of disappeared during the bravado of punk, and I'm not at all surprised that Bowie was a huge influence for that crowd.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Nick Rhodes or like the Spandau Ballet. Anybody like in that genre.
And then Bowie comes out of makeup and the costume department on Labyrinth, looking like he's out of the New Romantics movement. Anything you can do, I can do better.
Right.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, he steals what other people steal and makes it his own, which
even when they stole it from him originally.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So Anthony, you were talking about Life on Mars and how sparse that version was, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is such a 180. Okay, Barbara Streisand did a cover of Life on Mars. Has anyone heard this?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So first of all, let me just sort of preface this with it. This is like her least favorite album that she said she did, and she wished she could take it back. But it's called Butterflies from '74, and she did Life on Mars. And I don't know. I don't think it sounds bad. I think it sounds great. I mean, like she's another one of these artists that like you could hear sing anything, right? She can sing and interpret anything. So to me, it doesn't seem weird or forced like you might think it does. It just sounds awesome. I mean, she has a full orchestration, and her voice, like when she hits some of those really high notes that he hits, it's all open. It opens up and it just sounds like so perfect. So I don't know. I like it. And even if she doesn't, she doesn't like her own damn album.
Sorry, Babs.
Sorry, Babs. I like it. Yeah.
I would have thought that her least favorite one that she had ever recorded was her disco one. Like 78 or whatever. Even though it had that huge single on it that she did with Donna Summer that made her lots of bank. I still feel like that might be, it's kind of like the Ethel Merman disco album. It's not the coolest.
Right.
But she did make a lot of money from it, so maybe that's why she's okay with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This one she didn't make as much money. That's for sure.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Just going back to ones we've already mentioned, I can't believe I forgot about this when we were talking about various weird covers of Heroes. Motorhead have covered Heroes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And, it's something else to hear Lemmy with his trademark vocal fry.
Yeah.
Shouting the lyrics to Heroes.
But, there's something really exuberant about that. There's something really like freeing. I can't explain it. It's very like, it's a giant sort of like, it feels like he's releasing tension sort of when he sings it, which is kind of a new take on it.
And he died about 2 weeks before Bowie. So there's a weird connection there.
Yeah.
Circling around from what you did, kind of tangentially related to what Steph was saying, the Ricky Lee Jones cover of Rebel Rebel is kind of interesting and strange and great, as is the Boys Keep Swinging, there I go again, cover by Susanna Hoffs, which I think is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But the Ricky Lee Jones one is kind of like out of left field too, and it's so good.
Yeah, that was on my list too, the Ricky Lee Jones, because she basically takes this defiant, heavy stomping kind of rock song and turns it into this folk ballad. And it's really a neat take on it, I think. It's very unexpected. I mean, well, when you see Ricky Lee Jones's name on it, you kind of know what you're going to get with it. But just to hear Rebel Rebel done that way is so different. I think it's really cool.
Have you guys heard, this is a little pertinent because sadly, the drummer from My Chemical Romance died recently, which is horrible.
Yeah.
But I was sort of just Googling around for some stuff that I might not have, known off the top of my head or whatever. But I came across the used and My Chemical Romance version. They joined together to do Under Pressure. The album version I wasn't crazy about, but there was a live version that they did that was really great. I thought, I'm not a fan of either one of these bands in a major way. And I was just kind of like, prove it, but the two singers, their harmonies were really great. And it was just like a raw energy of that song and just of the bands joining forces and playing together. I thought live it was captured better live, I think, than on the recording.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
Especially with certain songs. There's just certain songs that are made to be performed live, Yeah. And I think you just capture the energy of that song better.
Yep.
Live.
Not quite in terms of a cover, but that's my go-to on karaoke.
Under Pressure.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which part do you sing?
Well, it depends on who my partner is and what they let me sing.
Okay.
A good partner will let me sing the Bowie part, which is in my range.
Right.
Someone who's cruel will insist that I sing Freddie, which is then absolutely butchered because that is absolutely not my range.
So when we go, and we will go.
Okay.
I have a lower register than you. I'm a bass. I don't think you're a bass. So I have to take Bowie. So you're stuck with Freddie, my friend.
God
unless
damn
you
it.
want to hear Freddie's high notes, like 2 or 3 octaves below what Freddie sings.
I mean, you're probably good enough to actually be able to translate that down. That's my problem. I'm not quite able to do that, so I have to try and sing way out of my range.
Well, whatever
God.
happens, we need a videotape of this, please.
Oh, yes. we will video it, and it goes out on the Modern Musicology socials.
So with my other podcast, Watchers in the Fourth Dimension, Don and Riley both made me sing Freddie. Julie, when I did it with her, let me sing Bowie.
Oh, that's sweet of her.
Nice, Julie.
I mean, she has a higher range than me, so it makes sense.
Yeah, that too.
The Halloween season's over, but the holidays are coming. That's right, Monster Attack will be celebrating this year's holiday season with some very, very special shows with our co-hosts Madeline, Shane, Clay, and Mark. So join us this holiday season every Monday for new episodes of Monster Attack, the podcast dedicated to old monster movies.
All right. So, earlier I mentioned that I had 2 things that were covered by Bowie band members. I actually have 3. I wasn't counting accurately. So I'm going to do 2 of them because both of these next ones are very unexpected songs to cover. The first one is by Donnie McCaslin. He was in Bowie's band on the last album, Black Star. It was his band, basically, that was backing Bowie. So he's a jazz musician. He's a saxophone player. So they're bringing this this very sort of acid jazz style to Bowie's songs on this last album. And not too long after Bowie passed, Donnie did an album of his own works, very avant-garde kind of jazz things, which is what Donnie is known for. And he does 2 Bowie covers on that. The first one is Warzawa from the Heroes album, and the other one is A Small Plot of Land from Outside. And they're really, really cool. They're both originate as instrumentals, and so they translate very easily into what Donnie does. But he takes them and makes the saxophone, obviously, is now the lead voice in these 2 pieces. And they're really, really cool. So I would encourage anybody to go listen to those. And then the other one, and this might be my favorite Bowie cover of all time. I don't know, but it would be hard to top this one. Miss Gail Ann Dorsey, who was his bass player for many years in the latter part of his career, the 90s and the aughts. And she is also an extraordinary vocalist. Like she kind of has a lower register. She has this really rich vibrato. She just has the most beautifully textured voice that I may have ever heard. Now, with Bowie's band, she does a lot of the higher parts and she does the Freddie parts on Under Pressure. But when she's singing her own stuff, she sings in this lower register that's so rich and so beautiful. And in late 2016, it may have been early 2017, I don't remember now, I think it was 16, there was sort of an all-star tribute that was put together by Mike Garson. I think it was Mike that put this together, but it was all sort of done like lots of different artists getting together, and they sort of video their own parts and they, edit them all together into one presentation. And Gail Ann did 2 songs, both of which were great and both of which were super deep cuts. But the one that just knocked me out of my chair, this was a pay-per-view live stream kind of thing, and all the money raised went to charity and whatever. And so it was never recorded. It was never released. You can't find it on YouTube. It's a one and done thing. I did find that it had been released. Somebody uploaded it to YouTube, but it has been long taken down. And so I have no way currently to relive this moment, but she did Strangers When We Meet from the Outside album, which is one of my favorite Bowie songs from the 90s. And her version of it, she turns it into like this smoky jazz kind of her and a piano kind of performance. Oh my God, it was unbelievable. Now you'll just have to take my word for it because you can't find it anywhere that I know of to listen to it, but it was incredible. And it still lives in my head as clear as the moment that I first saw it. When you paid for this show, you could watch it as many times as you wanted for a week. And I watched it over and over, and that song more than the rest of the show. It was incredible.
Just to let you know, last year, my friend Susie took us to the Sound and Vision show. that is at the Cutting Room in New York City, and we were going to go this year, but we can't. But it's Gail, Donnie McCaskill,
Oh, wow.
Jerry Leonard, Henry Hay, Jim Boja, is that how you say? And JJ Appleton, Catherine Russell. It's an amazing show. I mean, they all take turns singing, and then they bring out special guests and stuff. Like Mark Platty's always in it also, and
Yeah.
it's just so fun and exciting, and also it's really moving. I mean, it was really moving to watch like Gail singing the songs, So that's, if anyone's in New York, that's January 9th, 10th, and 11th in the new year.
And they're doing that with the St. Louis Symphony with an orchestra in February.
Wow.
It's going to be fantastic. Yeah. Gail and the symphony and a couple other, and Garson and a few other people, not Garson, somebody else are all doing that too. And it's going to be interesting to hear like this symphonic Bowie with like live with just tons of musicians. It's going to be great.
Cool.
The Last of the Shadow Puppets did 2 Bowie covers too.
Yeah.
They did a really great version of Moon Age Daydream, and then In the Heat of the Morning as well, which is
that's a good one.
Not a lot of people, not a song by Bowie that a lot of people do, but Moon Age Daydream was like, of course they did that. When you hear that, it makes perfect sense. But In the Heat of the Morning is really, really fantastic from them.
That I gotta find.
Yeah.
I love those early Bowie, like pre-debut album singles, those standalone singles. They're all so different and so of their time, and I love them. Here's another addition to our drinking game when I bring up the fact that I'm in a Bowie cover band. So my band, I mean, we do nothing but Bowie covers, but I got to get them to play some of those early. I tried to sneak one in this year, tried to get them to do one of the early ones, but not yet. I'll make it happen though.
It's interesting too. There's all kinds of weird, kind of in the vein of the Shooter Jennings and Ricky Lee Jones thing. Is Willie Nelson did a cover of David Bowie with Karen O of Under Pressure.
What?
It's just great.
Really?
Yeah. And then the one that I found this week that made me super excited was our friend Evan Salt from Sleepy Kitty.
Yay!
From his previous band Harvey Danger. They did a cover of "Oh You Pretty Things."
Oh, cool!
Oh, wow!
It sounds like they banged it out pretty quick too. Is what it from hearing everything related to that. It just seems like, we just sort of banged this sucker out as quick as we could.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The other weird one too is M. Ward did a cover of "Let's Dance." It's very different from what you would expect it to sound like, but it takes a little getting used to. And he did a session for KDHX, and he didn't do it, but he was like, tuning his guitar and stuff, and he's starting to play the Nile Rodgers little couple chords from it. I'm like, wait a minute. And he goes, oh yeah, I did a cover of "Let's Dance." And that's how I found out that he did a cover of "Let's Dance." There's your old guy story for the day.
Yeah, there's always got to be one.
Cool story, bro.
Yeah, the Warpaint cover of "Ashes to Ashes" I'm also a big fan of. Speaking of ones that are pretty faithful.
Oh, really?
I really like
I didn't really get that. I don't know. But I mean, it's cool, but I wasn't like, I don't know. I don't know what threw me off about that, but
another one that's totally 100% note for note, inflection for inflection copy of "Ashes to Ashes" is "Tears for Fears."
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I don't really even care for it. I mean, it's fine, but it sounds exactly like the Bowie record. And I don't need "Tears for Fears." I want it to sound like "Tears for Fears" doing David Bowie. I don't want it to sound like an exact carbon copy of it.
Even his voice sounds like exactly like Bowie. He like really imitates him on that. Or well, it sort of has that tone anyway. But yeah. I was like, what? Like, why so exact?
And if there was ever a band that should have done the early Bowie stuff, it's Tears for Fears. I just think it'd be like that sowing the seeds of love, Woman in Chains sort of period of Tears for Fears was ripe for mining early Bowie. But what do I know?
All right, I got one more before we wrap up.
Okay.
Right. So 9 Inch Nails have done a few. And while it's technically a remix and not a cover, their version of "I'm Afraid of Americans" is phenomenal, and track down a live performance of that. It's so good. And I'm less familiar with it, but I did see that they also covered, I think it was "Fashion" which I'm going to be listening to as soon as we get off of this. I hadn't realized that until I was kind of looking up I'm Afraid of Americans just before we started recording, and kind of went, oh shoot, I'm not going to have time.
Yeah. I would just tell everyone to listen to the Seu Jorge Bowie covers because they're just amazing.
And those are the ones from Life
Aquatic. Yeah,
Yep.
those are great. And then Flaming Lips have done a couple Bowie covers. And those kind of fall like into the territory of Langley, where you're like, what exactly is this? But I like it, kind of thing. Like the Life on Mars done by the Flaming Lips is just like, yeah, of course they did. You know,
Right.
It's just like this is absolutely perfect for them to do. So
Right. Well, I've got two more that I want to mention really quickly. And one I was going to do earlier, but I didn't get a chance to slip it in. And that is a guy that I've never heard before. I've no idea. I just discovered it this week, and he's called Clifford Slapper. And he makes the list simply because he's got the badassest last name I've ever heard.
Totally.
Slapper.
Slapper.
And he does a very piano and voice, very jazzy kind of version of Sweet Thing from the Diamond Dogs album, which is a very unexpected choice. And he takes it into these really kind of interesting jazzy directions, much more expressive lines and phrasings. And he's got an extraordinarily beautiful voice, just like Gail Ann does. And I think that one's great. But the one that I kind of want to close us out with is the only Bowie cover that I am aware of that has ever been performed in space.
Oh.
And that was Chris Hadfield, astronaut, who took his acoustic guitar with him up into space on the shuttle and did a version of Space Oddity live on television, beamed all across the world. And then when he got home, because he didn't take a recording studio with him, recorded it with an actual band and everything. And it is really, really cool. But just the fact that an astronaut performed this song, which is about an astronaut getting lost in space, and just plays it in orbit around Earth, is the coolest thing.
That is. And that's cool to end on. That is really good. Yeah.
So maybe I'll sneak a clip of that into the play out on that episode and just risk getting sued by somebody in Bowie's estate or something. All right. So that wraps it up for us. We are going to be on continuing our hiatus. We are going to not be doing any more shows throughout January, but we will be back at the beginning of February. So in about a month from now, there will be a new episode out. And what is planned at this point, now that's a month away, so it may change, but right now we're going to be talking about bands that continue on with no original members. And if that's the case, then is it still the same band? So we'll explore that, because I've got some really interesting questions about that. So until then, since it's the new year, and since who knows, maybe new people are listening to us, Stephanie, why don't you tell people where they can hear more from you?
Alrighty. You can find me on Facebook under Stephanie Seymour Music. You can find me on Instagram under there. Let's do that again. You can find me on Instagram at there_r_birds. And I also have a website, therearebirds. How come I can't talk? I also have a website called therearebirds.com. And you can find me on Bandcamp under my name, and also Spotify and all the other streaming services.
Sweet. All right, Robbo.
Hey, you can find me on Louder Than War Radio with a radio show called Antics. That's on Mondays from 6 to 8 Greenwich time, 1 to 3 Eastern, 12 to 2 Central. Kids, hide your parents. And also on the Face Radio out of Brooklyn, New York, over yonder by Steph, with the Free Design, which is on Mondays, and that is from 5 to 7 Central or 6 to 8 Eastern time. And then also writing about classical music and popular culture for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and I'm writing about music for Inc. 19 and a couple other places. So just keep an eye on that. You can find me on Blue Sky and the Book of Face and Insta under Rob Levy, Rob_Levy. So pretty simple.
Killer. All right, Anthony.
You can find me here and there.
Mm-hmm.
After
Which
Rob's
here
long one,
and
I
which
thought
there.
I'd keep it short. You can also find me on the Watchers in the Fourth Dimension podcast, where we are watching our way through all of Doctor Who from 1963 until now. We have finally made it into the 1980s at the time that we're recording this. We're in season 18, Tom Baker's final season.
Okay, hang on. Keep in mind, this is January.
We'll still be in season 18.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay,
Have it
never
all
mind.
timed out.
Please forgive my interruption then. Start over.
Okay. God damn it.
I know, I'm sorry.
You can also find me on Watchers in the Fourth Dimension, which is a Doctor Who podcast where we are watching our way through the entirety of the show from 1963 until now. At the time of recording, we are in the 1980s at last with season 18, Tom Baker's final season. As with any podcast, you can find us wherever you like to get your podcasts, including Spotify, Google, no, not Google, that one doesn't exist anymore. Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple, etc., and including wherever you're listening to this one, probably. You can also find us on the socials at Watchers4D, and if anyone wants to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram, is probably my preferred one, at Englishman in ATL.
All right. You can go find my stuff at cosmiccreative.com, KOZMIC creative.com. And there you will see not only some books that I've written and published, but hopefully by the time you hear this episode, some new books have come out, and podcasts that I do, and also information about this here film that I've been working on. Yay. That Anthony is going to be appearing in as well. Yay. And it's a documentary about the Doctor Who convention that I ran for 17 years. We're planning to have a teaser trailer out in February and the full trailer released in April, and then the film will premiere in May. So I'm saying all that to keep us honest. So we put it out there. We have to stick to it. So go check that out. We will be back in February. So everybody have a great coming month. Hope your January goes well. And we will talk to you soon. And once again, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping for the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.